He took a firmer hold. Barnabas was almost dragging him along. The silence was unbroken. Of the road they were following, all that Kay knew was that, to judge from its surface, they had not yet turned aside into a by-street. He vowed to himself that however difficult the way, and however doubtful even the prospect of his being able to get back, he would not cease from going on. He would surely have strength enough to let himself be dragged, and the road must come to an end sometime. By day, the castle had looked within easy reach, and of course, the messenger would take the shortest cut. At that moment, Barnabas stopped. Where were they? Was this the end? Would Barnabas try to leave him? He wouldn't succeed. Kay clutched his arm so firmly that it almost made his hand ache. Or had the incredible happened, and they were already in the castle or at its gates? But they had not done any climbing, so far as Kay could tell. Or had Barnabas taken him up by an imperceptibly mounting road? "Where are we?" said Kay in a low voice, more to himself than Barnabas. "At home," said Barnabas in the same tone. "At home. Be careful now, sir, or you'll slip. We go down here." "Down?" "Only a step or two," added Barnabas, and was already knocking at a door. A girl opened it, and they were on the threshold of a large room, almost in darkness, for there was no light save for a tiny oil lamp hanging over a table in the background. "Who is with you, Barnabas?" asked the girl. "The land surveyor," said he. "The land surveyor?" repeated the girl in a louder voice, turning towards the table. Two old people rose to their feet, a man and a woman, as well as another girl. They greeted Kay. Barnabas introduced the whole family, his parents and his sister Olga and Amelia. Kay scarcely glanced at them and let them take his wet coat off to dry at the stove. So it was only Barnabas who was at home, not he himself. But why had they come here? Kay drew Barnabas aside and asked, "Why have you come here? Or do you live in the castle precincts?" "The castle precincts?" repeated Barnabas, as if he didn't understand. "Barnabas," said Kay, "you left the inn to go to the castle." "No," said Barnabas, "I left it to come home. I don't go to the castle till the early morning. I never sleep there." "Oh," said Kay, "so you weren't going to the castle, but only here." The man's smile seemed less brilliant, and his person was more significant. "Why didn't you say so?" "You didn't ask me, sir," said Barnabas. "You only said you had a message to give me, but you wouldn't give it to me in the parlor or in your room. So I thought you could speak to me quietly here in my parents' house. The others will all leave if you wish, and if you prefer, you could spend the night here. Haven't I done the right thing?" Kay could not reply. It had been a misunderstanding, a common, vulgar misunderstanding, and Kay had been completely taken in by it. He had been bewitched by Barnabas's close-fitting, silken gleaming jacket, which now that it was unbuttoned, displayed a coarse, dirty grey shirt patched all over, and beneath that the huge, muscular chest of a labourer. His surroundings not only corroborated all this, but even emphasized it. The old gouty father, who progressed more by the help of his groping hands than the slow movements of his stiff legs, and the mother with her hands folded on her bosom, who was equally incapable of any but the smallest steps by reason of her stoutness. Both of them, father and mother, had been advancing from their corner towards Kay ever since he had come in, and were still a long way off. The yellow-haired sisters, very each like each other, and very like Barnabas, but with harder features than their brother. Great strapping wenches hovered round their parents and waited for some word of greeting from Kay, but he could not utter it. He had been persuaded that in this village everybody meant something to him, and indeed he was not mistaken. It was only for these people here that he could not feel the slightest interest. If he had been fit to struggle back to the inn alone, he would have left at once. The possibility of accompanying Barnabas to the castle early in the morning did not attract him. He had hoped to penetrate into the castle unremarked in the night on the arm of Barnabas. But on the arm of the Barnabas he had imagined, a man who was more to him than anyone else, the Barnabas he had conceived to be far above his apparent rank and in the intimate confidence of the castle. With the son of such a family, however, a son who integrally belonged to it, and who was already sitting at a table with the others, a man who was not even allowed to sleep in the castle. He could not possibly go to the castle in broad light of day. It would be ridiculous and hopeless undertaking. Kay sat down on a window seat where he determined to pass the night without accepting any other favor. The other people in the village who turned him away or were afraid of him seemed much less dangerous, for all that they did was to throw him back on his own resources, helping him to concentrate his powers. But such ostensible helpers as these, who on the strength of a petty masquerade brought him into their homes instead of into the castle, deflected him, whether intentionally or not, from his goal, and only helped to destroy him. An invitation to join the family at table he ignored completely, stubbornly sitting with bent head on his bench. Then Olga, the gentler of the sisters, got up, not without a trace of maidenly embarrassment, came over to Kay and asked him to join the family meal of bread and bacon, saying that she was going to fetch some beer. "Where from?" asked Kay. "From the inn," she said. That was welcome news to Kay. He begged her, instead of fetching beer, to accompany him back to the inn, where he had important work waiting to be done. But the fact now emerged that she was not going so far as his inn. She was going to one much nearer, called Hiranoff. Nonetheless, Kay begged to be allowed to accompany her, thinking that there perhaps he might find lodging for the night. However wretched it might be, he would prefer it to the best bed these people could offer him. Olga did not reply at once, but glanced towards the table. Her brother stood up, nodded obligingly, and said, "If the gentleman wishes." This assent was almost enough to make Kay withdraw his request. Nothing could be of much value if Barnabas assented to it. But since they were already wondering whether Kay would be admitted into that inn, and doubting its possibility, he insisted emphatically upon going, without taking the trouble to give a colourable excuse for his eagerness. This family would have to accept him as he was. He had no feeling of shame where they were concerned. Yet he was somewhat disturbed by Amelia's direct and serious gaze, which was unflinching and perhaps a little stupid.